Megillah Daf Lamed Aleph brings a brayse Tanya Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer Ezra Tikein Lahem LiYisrael Sheyu Koyrim Kloloi Shebetoras Koyanim Koydem Atzeres V'Shebemishne Torah Koydem Rosh Hashanah My Time Amarabaye Kedei Shetichle Shona V'Kila Loiseo. By reading the klolos before the beginning of a new year, it accomplishes somehow Tichle Shona V'Kila Loiseo. May the year be over with its curses. Now, we see that long before the Minig Bovel became the norm, that we complete the entire Torah every year, the cycle that we follow, already Ezra was masakin that the klolos of Parshas Bechukoisai should be read before Shavuos, and the klolos of Parshas Kisavai should be read before Rosh Hashanah. Meaning that even in Ma'arava, that the Gemara tells us in Eretz Yisrael, they used to complete the Torah in a 3-year cycle, and Memela, the klolos were nowhere close in terms of the cycle to Shavuos and to Rosh Hashanah. And the Rambam records that even in his time, there were still those that followed that cycle. Nevertheless, there was a Takonis Ezra. There was a Kriya Mi'inyaneh D'Yomen to read the klolos of Toras Koyanim before Shavuos and the klolos of Mishnah Torah before Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara actually asks, Bishloime Rosh Hashanah, Kedei Shetichle Shona V'Kila Loiseo, Elo Atzeres, Otu Atzeres Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara says, in Atzeres Nami Rosh Hashanah, he ditnanu ba'atzeres al Peiroi Se'ilon. Just as an aside, I want to point out that it's interesting that if you look in Parshas Emor, in the Parsha of Moedim, we have Shabbos, then we have Pesach, then we have Shavuos, then we have Rosh Hashanah, then we have Yom Kippur, and then we have Sukkot. Each one of the Moedim appears in an independent Parsha, which is a Parsha Stuma, whereas the Parsha of Atzeres is a Parsha Psucha. You know, if you look in the Chumash, you see it says a Samach or a Pei. A Parsha Psucha means that the Parsha of Shavuos is open to Rosh Hashanah, which maybe has to do with what the Gemara says, that Atzeres Nami Rosh Hashanah. So these are really two Rosh Hashanahs, and therefore the Parsha of Shavuos is open to the Parsha of Rosh Hashanah. In any case, we have a minhag to do a yearly cycle, and Memela, it so happens, interestingly, that we read Kisavoi close to Rosh Hashanah, and we read Bechukoisai close to Shavuos, but not really before Rosh Hashanah and before Shavuos, but we always have a Shabbos in between. We read Kisavoi, and then we read Nitzavim, or Nitzavim Vayelech. We read Bechukoisai, and then we read Vayikra. And Taisvis in Masechtas Megillah says that L'chora we should say, and he brings so in the name of Beis Midrash Shel Rabbeinu Nisim Goy, L'chora we need to say that since according to our cycle it comes out close enough to Shavuos and to Rosh Hashanah, it's enough to be Mekayim the Takonis Ezra, even though we skip a week, but it's close enough to be Mekayim the Takonis Ezra. However, Taisvis is bothered that l'chora, if that would be the reason that it's good enough, even though it's not perfect, so some years we do have the opportunity, even according to our cycle, to learn Kisavai the Shabbos before Rosh Hashanah Mamish, and that is in a year where there are 2 Shabbosos after Rosh Hashanah. In other words, there's a Shabbos Shuvah, and there's a Shabbos between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. In such a case, we could have read Nitzavim Shabbos Shuvah, and Vayelech. We could have read Vayelech Shabbos Shuvah. No, what is Taisus asking? That when we have two Shabbos after Rosh Hashanah, why do we separate Nitzavim from Vayelech and we read Vayelech on Shabbos Shuvah and Hazinu the next Shabbos? We should have been Mechalek Matos and Masei, says Taisvis, which are long parshas, and read parshas Kisavai before Rosh Hashanah and read Nitzavim Vayelech on Shabbos Shuvah, and then we read Hazinu the Shabbos after, and so we would be able to be Mekayim the Takonis Ezra as is, without any compromise. And nevertheless, we see that we never read Parshas Kisavai the Shabbos before Rosh Hashanah, and we read either Nitzavim or Nitzavim Vayelech before Rosh Hashanah. So why do we put Nitzavim and Vayelech together before Rosh Hashanah if we could have been Mechalik Matas and Masei and therefore put Kisavai right before Rosh Hashanah? Tosfos builds his kasha on the fact that it would be a maila to separate Nitzav, Matas and Masei, which are Parshias Aruchos. That would be a maila over being Mechalik, Nitzavim, and Vayelech, which are Parshias Ktsoros. I just want to point out that it could be that the kasha is even a bigger kasha, because, there's a theory that Nitzav and Vayelech are really one parsha. Reb Sadia Goin, L'moshel, writes in the Siddur of Reb Sadia Goin, he writes about that there's some parshias that are mitztarfois l'fa'omim shtayim shtayim. They are parshias that we sometimes connect to parshas. When it comes to Nitzavim Vayelech, he says, Umehen, parsha ha-mitzchalekes l'shtayim, v'nikreis b'shtei shabboses, im yesh tzorech b'kach. V'hi atem Nitzavim, ha-nechlekes b'Vayelech Moshe. So you see that Be'emes Nitzavim and Vayelech are one parsha. And it's just that sometimes we connect them. And therefore the kasha is even bigger. Why do we connect Matas and Masei if Nitzavim and Vayelech are Be'etzem one parsha? There are many rayas to this, because in the Zohar it says that there are 53 parshas in the Torah. We have 54, which again is Mavur according to Reb Sadia Goin, that Nitzavim and Vayelech are really one parsha. Sometimes we separate them. So also it says in the Meiri in Kiryas Sefer, says Chilku HaTorah Lenun Gimel Zdorim V'asara Be'ela HaDvarim She'atamoyna Nitzavim Vayelech Be'echod She'eino Melaseda Echod Afal Pi Shecholkim Oisa Lefa'amim. So the Meiri writes Mefurish that Nitzavim and Vayelech are really one parsha. Also, that the Torah gives a siman in Siman Tov Chof Ches. He gives a siman on when we separate Nitzavim and Vayelech and when we read them together. He says, Pas Bag HaMelech, a pasuk in Daniel, that Bag HaMelech, if HaMelech, which is Rosh Hashanah, falls out on Beis Gimel, on Monday or Tuesday, then Pas, where Poises, Miloshin Poisos Oisa Pitim, we crumble Nitzavim and Vayelech into two. So once again, you see that Nitzavim and Vayelech are really one parsha, and we separate them. So sometimes we separate Nitzavim from Vayelech only in order to put Nitzavim before Rosh Hashanah, even though we could have done Nitzavim and Vayelech on Shabbos Shuvah and read Kisavai before Rosh Hashanah. So that makes Tosfos' kasha even stronger. Why don't we separate Matos from Masei? Why are we Mechaber Matos and Masei? And then Instead of what? Reading Nitzavim and Vayelech together on Shabbos Shuvah and reading Kisavai before Rosh Hashanah. So Tosfos says, Lakach nireli hatam, shonu mechalkin oisam, lefi shonu roitzim lahafstik, v'likroi Shabbos achas lefnei Rosh Hashanah, b'parasha shaloi tahei medaberes b'klolis klal, shaloi lahasmich ha-klolis l'Rosh Hashanah. So Tosfos says that it's not a compromise. The fact that we read the klolos of Teres Koyanim, not the week before Rosh Hashanah, but 2 weeks before Rosh Hashanah, is because we want to be mafsik with one parsha which is not beklolos, in order not to be masmich the klolos to Rosh Hashanah. But l'chor avada, it seems that in the time of Ezra, they did read the parsha of the klolos before Rosh Hashanah and before Shavuos. So what is it? So how is it that we decided that we don't want to be masmich and we want to be mafsik b'Shabbos achas? So maybe we may suggest that what's the idea of Tichla Shona V'Kila Leiseo, that by reading the Klolos, we'll get rid of the Klolos. The Pshat Mistam is that when Yidden read the Klolos, they have a Hisoirus B'tshuva. They reflect, they make a Cheshbon HaNefesh. And Mamela, they bring themselves to a level where Tichla Shona V'Kila Leiseo, and they're worthy of Tachel Shona U'Birchaiseho. So that's why Ezra was misaken that we should read the Klolos before Rosh Hashanah and before Shavuos. That was how it was in Ezra's time. But maybe with the Yeridas Hadoros, we came to a point that if we would read the Klolos, the Shabbos before Rosh Hashanah, it would put us out to the point where it wouldn't be an inspiration for Tikkun HaMaisim, but Adirabba, it would throw us into a despair, into a yish. And therefore, we decided at a later point, Shaloi lahasmich haklolois, totally to Rosh Hashanah. It's not a b'di'evet. The pshat is likroi Shabbos achas l'fnei Rosh Hashanah b'parsha shaloi tehei midaberes b'klolos klal, in order to give us the proper balance that we should, on one hand, internalize the message of the klolos, but on the other hand, not despair and not give up and not throw in the towel, but it should serve as an inspiration for Tikkun HaMaisim. You know, Be'emes Rashi brings in this week's parsha, Midrash Agoda, Lama nismach parshas atem nitzavim leklolos. Lefi, sheshamu Yisrael mea klolos choseh shtayim, chutz mi memtes shebetoras koyanim, hoiriku peneihem, va'amru mi yuchal lamoy be'elu. How will we be able to withstand such harsh clothes? Hischel Moshe lefaisom atem nitzavim hayoim har behich astem lamokoim v'lo yoso yitchem kloya v'harei atem kayomim lefonov. So it comes out that the fact that we use nitzavim as a counterbalance to the klolos of kisavoy is not just the hamtzah of the later doris. Already in the Torah, Parshas Nitzavim appears as a counterbalance to the klolos, but l'chora, it's not moving, because are the klolos for real or are they not for real? Moshe Rabbeinu was now telling them that it's not for real, that har behechastem l'fnei hamokim v'harei v'atem adayin chayim v'kayomim lefonov. The emphasis that in this Parsha Gufa it says, Pen yesh bochem yisho mishpocha yishevet asher levavoi paina hayoim v'hoya b'shomai is divrei ha'olo hazoitz v'hizbarech bilvavoi lema sholem yeli b'shrirus li b'yelech l'man svaysa rova es atzmeya. It says, Lo yoy v'Hashem sloyach loy v'rovtza boi kol ha'olo haksuva b'sefer. So Moshe Rabbeinu was telling them, being mefayis them, har behechastem l'fnei hamokim, but immediately he says, listen, if you're going to think it's not going to hit you, you're making a big mistake. So how do we understand this? Mistama Dafman Lenin, that those Yidden that internalize the message of the klolos to the point of hoiriku pneihem, that they're overwhelmed with fear, to them Moshe Rabbeinu says, don't worry. But those that don't take it seriously, those that say to themselves, to them the Torah says, so that's the two sides of the coin of how we enter Rosh Hashanah. The Amos says that there's this pasuk that says, Shalom Yiyeli. It's hard to understand. He's going to hear this klala. He will bless himself in his heart and he'll say, peace will be with me. I'll see as I'll go in the ways that my heart feels fit. Why is he going to give himself that blessing? I mean, he's being cursed and he's going to give himself a blessing. Is that how do we read the pasuk? So there's a fascinating reading of this pasuk in the Targum Yonasan Ben Uziel. The Targum Yonasan Ben Uziel says, "There's Baruch Belvavei Leimor, v'yehi b'mishmei yos pisgomei moimoso hado." When I'll hear these curses, v'yisyaesh b'liboy. who will be Messiahish in his heart. Lemeimer Shlomo Yeheli. This is how in the world did the Targum Yonasim and Ezil come up with the reading V'Hizbarich to mean V'Yisyayesh? I think Mistama, he's learning that it's Miloshin Kilachos Sichra Kol Berech Nivrecha V'Nishtachave. In other words, he'll bow down in his heart. His heart will fall to the ground. V'Hizbarich Bilvave is V'Yisyayesh B'Liba. And now we understand that when he's going to hear the Divrei Ha'olah, he's really going to fall apart, and he's going to be V'Hizbarich Bilvave. But what does it mean? V'Hizbarich Bilvave Leimar Shalom Yeli. What is it? B'Shrirus Libi Elech. L'man Sfoisa Rova Esatzmeya. Dafman Dachlenin, that the pshat is that he'll be Messiahish, and when a person is Messiahish, that in itself pushes him away. He's not going to engage in Avodas Hashem because of the fear, but the fear is going to overwhelm him and push him away, and he's going to throw in the towel, and he's going to say, forget about it. I can't live up to these standards, and therefore I'll do nothing. So the V'Hizbarech Bilvavoy Leimor is V'Yisyayesh B'Liboy. But what comes out of that Yush is that he throws in the towel and is B'Shrirus Libi Elech. He keeps nothing, because if I can't be everything, so I might as well be nothing. The Gemara says in this Laman Sfoisa Rovo Esatzmeyo, it's a very shver pasuk. All the Rishonim have different readings. Rashi says that Rovo is Averis that we do b'mezid, Tzmeyo is Averis that we do b'shoigig, the Ramban says Fakert. He'll add on Averis that he does b'shoigig, unwillingly, to Averis that he does willingly, or vice versa, he'll add on Averis that he does willingly to Averis that he does unwillingly. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Ayin Vav Amid Beis, has a very interesting touch in this pasuk. The Gemara says, "Hamachzir Aveda legoy." Somebody that returns an Aveda to a goy, all of Hakosuv Oimer leman Svois Horova Esatzmeya. This pasuk is actually talking about a Machzir Aveda legoy. What does Rashi say? Hamachzir Hishva. The Chiber Goy Yisrael. Sfoisa Ravas Atzmeya means he's comparing a Goy to a Yid. And why is Rava and Tzmeya referring to Goyim and Yidin? Dr. Rashi, Rava, Oivdei Kechavim, Shesveim, they're satiated, they're full, they're Einam Tzmeim Leyoitzram. They're full of themselves. They're not thirsty for their Creator. And Tzmeya, Zu Knesses Yisrael, shetzmeya ute'eva leyiras yoitzra ulekayem mitzvoisov. So Yidden are tzmeya, and Goyim are rova, and when somebody is machzir aveda legoy, he's comparing a goy to a Yid, and therefore he's svois harova es atzmeya. That's what the Gemara says in Sanhedrin Daf Ayin Vav. So I ask you, who's comparing the goy to the Yid? We're talking about somebody that b'shamay is divrei Allah, is barach b'lvavay leimah, b'shvirus libi eilech. I mean, l'chayra, he's the lowest of low. Is this Jew begeder tzmeya liyoitzra? Is he thirsty for yiras shamayim? That we say to him that if you give an aveda to a goy, you're comparing the goy to yourself, and therefore it's svois harova esatzmeya. So obviously we see that even the lowest of low, even this person who's in the matzav of B'shirus Libi Eilech, we say that he's Tzmei L'Yotzra. And that avada is geschmacker to understand, according to the Targum Yonasim ben Azil, that the saying of B'shirus Libi Eilech is really not a consequence of rebellion. The B'shirus Libi Eilech is because he's meyurish, because he's giving up, but really he would so much want. But he feels inadequate, he feels unworthy, he feels incapable, and therefore he's v'hizbarech bilvavoy leimar shalom yeli. But really he's a tzmei l'yotzra, and therefore the pasuk is saying that if you give back an aveda l'goy, you're comparing him to yourself and yourself to him, and therefore you're over on Leman Svois Harova Esatzmeya. So the point is that, the Eimas Hadin, is very important. The fear of the Klolis is very important. But together with that, we need also to be mischazik in understanding that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a roitze b'shuva. We say, Ki imcha haslicha leman tivorei. With you is forgiveness, leman tivorei. So Rashi has his pshat, but the Ibn Ezra says, in order that we should fear you. Hashem forgives us in order that we should fear him. Because if there would be no forgiveness, then we would give up. And there would be no Yiras Shamayim. Because once we sinned, we would forget about it. We would say, L'man Svois Harova Esatzmeya. We would give up. And Ki imcha slicha leman tivorei. With you is slicha in order that you should be feared. Because in order to fear the Rebbeinu Shalom, we have to believe that there's a way back and that there's a way to correct our mistakes and our failures, and therefore we can maintain our Yiras Shamayim. We can maintain our Yiras Shamayim. They bring that the Chidushei Harim says that Shofar is Roshei Teves, Shoresh, Poire, Rosh Velana. I have no idea what he was trying to say with this Zog. That Shofar is Roshei Teves, Shoresh, Poire, Rosh Velana. But it could be, according to this, that it was saying really in this pasuk that even the Shoresh, Poire, Rosh Velana is really, there's a deeper Shoresh. And that Shoresh is really the Shoresh of the Spirit. The Shoresh of the Yisyayish Belibe. And therefore, when we blow the shofar, we're connecting with what's beneath the Shoresh, Poire, Rosh Velana. We're digging into the real me that's deeper than the Shoresh, Poire, Rosh Velana. And like they say that the neficha of the shofar is the koil pashut, the neshama shenasato b'tahirahi. And that reveals to us that the real me is really wanting tzmeya u'te'eva liyotzra, and if chas v'sholem it's not expressed, and on the level of expression we see a shoresh poire rosh velana, it's not really who we are, and therefore we could reconnect with the essence of our being and change our ways. Oh, and that's Bemis Mavur in the Torah that brings in the name of the Medrash that Yidden are not like Umasayla when it comes to Shoshana, the Mistaprim, Umasgalchin, and Roichtzin, and Betuchim, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yasalam Nes. That's really the on one hand, we say, V'rovtza boi kol ha'ola. On the other hand, we say, Atem nitzavim hayoim kulchem. As the Paneach Rosa says that hayoim is meramis on the yoim of Rosh Hashanah, like it says in the Zohar in several places that Stam hayoim is a remes for Rosh Hashanah. Or Mamela, we have to enter Rosh Hashanah with that feeling of Atem nitzavim hayoim kulchem l'fnei Hashem alekeichem. Okay, so that's that. I think it's enough for now.